to share it with. So we thought, you know what, I'm going to share the file with other teachers here. And maybe they can read your letter with their students, and their students can reply to you and send another letter. So even if you cannot think of someone to include or to share things with, there's always someone. There's always another option, right? Maybe it's another teacher, maybe it's another group. So there's always someone to do this with, right? And it's really motivating for students to see that other people, like other than the teacher, is going to read what they write. So it adds a little something, right? Especially when we have been working together for a long time, maybe some months, and it's like, another essay for my teacher. Well, let's do something different, right? Let's do something that someone else is going to read, right? All right. Cool. I'm glad you liked it. I see some more people saying hi. How are you doing? All right. So next idea, class Instagrams. I absolutely love this one, and I think you'll love it as well. So this is the thing. We read The 12th Night by William Shakespeare at Newland School. And my students at the time were 13 years old. So it was actually really challenging because they were very, very young. Their English level was amazing, but the language in the play was a bit complex. So I was like, how are we going to go about it? So this is what we did. We used social media because that is something they use and they love it. So basically, we read together in class. We analyzed the context of production. We were like, but what did this mean at the time? Why is this important? What's going on? Where are we going with this? Is this character good or bad? What makes you say that? So we worked on that together. And then as homework, I said, you know what? You are going to work in teams. You have to pick a character and you have to set up an Instagram account, and you're going to be that character all throughout the year. And this is how we're going to go about it. Now, this is the thing. If you want to do this, it's super important that you are very organized. You cannot just say, post on Instagram. No, that's not going to work. So this is how we went about it. I created some files with different charts, and students had to share their Instagram accounts, right? So that I could follow them. I also had a special Instagram account. I was the captain, right? And they had to pick a character. And for example, I would say, okay, guys, so today we finished reading Act 1. Good. I would like you to come up with 3 posts to tell me a little bit about your character, right? The one that you picked, what's going on in the play. And also tell me a little bit about the setting, right? When and where is the story taking place? So students had to complete these charts. So it says, content, right? Hello, Instagram. I know you have been waiting for your handsome Orsino to arrive to, it says social media, it looks very small. I can't wait for us to interact, right? So they shared the content they were going to share on social media, and then they had to share the visuals as well, because we're talking about underage children that were going to be sharing things on the internet. So they had to share that with me before, obviously. And then they had to share the reasons why they wanted to share that. So these girls said, we wanted to have an introduction for our Instagram. We believe that Orsino is a self-centered person for the way he speaks in the play. That's why we decided to make the first post quite arrogant. And I was like, okay, good. So they have an opinion. They understand what's going on. Nice. Then for the second post, they wrote this. If music be the food of love, play on. I have been listening to new music lately. The 21st century has some great songs. Which are your favorite artists? So they started sharing quotes from the story as well. And I thought that was fantastic. And the cool thing is that they started making connections. And once they understood how this project worked, I could say, okay, so we finished reading Act 2, Scene 1. Cool. I would like you to share some stories telling people what's going on, telling your followers what's going on. So they would share some stories, leave them in highlights, obviously, because I needed to check them out. later, they were able to share a lot of information through the captures or descriptions of their posts. They shared quotes as well. And then they also started making connections between the play we were reading and the content they consume like every single day. For example, One Direction, a band some of my students absolutely loved, had a song titled Olivia, and one of the characters' name is Olivia. So we thought, hey, that's amazing, and they share that song and also wrote a little bit about the connection between that character and what the song is about. So I thought that is absolutely amazing. So they got really creative and they really enjoyed it. It was a very, very, very nice activity. And it's one that I wanted to share because if you want to do something that's different, but also something that's simple and doesn't require a lot of preparation, this activity is really good. All right, next one. So space retrieval. I read a lot about this one, and I really wanted to do something with my students that wasn't necessarily testing them, like doing exams, but I needed something like an excuse to go back every now and then and go over the words and expressions and phrases and idioms and structures and all the things that we worked on. So we started doing this. Whenever we had 5 or 10 extra minutes, I asked them to write them some questions using the vocabulary from that lesson. Of course, we would go over them together to make sure that everything was all right, right? And then I kept that handy. And sometimes at the beginning of a lesson, or when we had some extra minutes, or when we needed a brain break, for example, I would ask them some of these questions just to see if they remembered the meaning of these words or how to use those structures. And it didn't take me any time. I didn't create the questions myself. They did it. And it was a lovely activity all throughout the year. Here. This is a picture of what the jar looks like if you teach face-to-face. If you teach online, I have a file, a separate file where I keep all those questions. So you can do it. Doesn't matter whether you teach face-to-face or online. It's a very nice activity. And once you have those questions handy, you can do whatever you want. It can be an exit ticket. It can be a way to check understanding. It can be a way to get insights, before planning a new lesson. Are we going to move on and start working on new vocabulary items, or should we go back and maybe review the things we worked on? We can use it as a warm-up activity. We can use it to revise and go over everything we worked on before a test. We can use it as a brain break. We can use it as a game, right? We can compete. Students can divide themselves into teams and they can play together and we can give them points. So there are lots of things that we can do. And again, it doesn't take any time to prepare if you're the teacher. And the cool thing is that students are part of the process. They are the ones coming up with the questions. They are the ones answering the questions. So it's a very, very nice way to go over all the things that we see during a year, right? Right. Let's see. Yeah, I see some more people saying hi. Cool. I'm glad you like them. Fantastic. All right, so I have one more idea to share with you guys, and this one is my very favorite one. I really, really, really wanted to share this one with you. So it's the teacher's notebook, and this is the thing. Hear this. Oh, are the answers respectful? What, to this? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about the vocabulary items that you work on with your students, and then they use them to come up with questions, and then they share something. I don't know. A new word can be customs. How do you feel when you go through customs? Well, I get a bit nervous because I never know if I'll have to leave something there, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're all respectful. All right, so my favorite activity, hear this. So I use social media a lot, and I'm always interacting and chatting with teachers. And sometimes I get questions like, how can I do this? How can I go over this topic with my students? How can I work on whatever, right? And I always tell them, well, I'm not an expert, but this is something I've tried, or this is something that has worked for us, or this is something that I'm planning to do. And then I tell them, what do you do? What have you tried? How do you go about it? And many teachers share how they go about it. And they end up sharing the most creative, amazing, out of the box, original ideas. And I'm like, are you kidding? You just said you were not creative and you didn't know how to do this. And you have this lovely idea. Come on. I mean, it sounds wonderful. Now I am going to do what you said. So this is the activity. We're going to keep a notebook handy. And I know you have one. You don't need to get a new one. I know that all of you have one at home that you have never used because it's cute and perfect and you don't want to ruin it. So grab that one, the one that you have there sitting at home, and you're going to keep it handy all throughout the year. All right? Every time the day is over, it doesn't have to be after every single lesson, but once the day is over, right? I know you probably want to go and have lunch or have a coffee. Maybe you want to go and have dinner, but take 2 minutes. It takes 2 minutes, I promise. Write down the things that work and write down the things that don't work. And that's all you have to do. Maybe you did something, you go to class and you do something and you realize that all your students love that. And you're like, okay, I'm going to write it down. I'm going to do this again. I don't know what happened, but let's repeat that. You try a new game. You saw a teacher, playing a game with their students on Instagram, and you thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. You tweak it a little bit because, you know your students, and it works. Write it down. You join a session like this one. You see an activity that you like, write it down, right? And also write down the things that don't work. We played a game. Students didn't like it. I planned this lovely speaking activity. They didn't speak. That's okay. Write it down. Write everything down. But the cool thing is that the moment we write things down, we define them. Because, sometimes we leave the classroom and we go home and we think, okay, that was not very good. I wonder what went wrong. I wonder how I could make that better. But we also don't really know what happened. So the moment we write it down, we're like, oh, it was the instructions, or it was the example. It wasn't that clear. Oh, maybe I should have shared a model. It's really easy to find solutions to things the moment we describe them or give them a name or identify them. So write things down, everything, the things that work, the things that don't work, everything. And the cool thing is that the moment we keep a record of all these things, right, we're going to end up with a very long list. And someday we're going to go back and say, okay, what did I write last month, or what happened last year? And we might end up saying, hey, that was a lovely idea. I want to do that again. Oh my God, that project, I forgot about it. We have to do that one more time. So I think that teachers are the most creative people ever. And I often interact with teachers who say, no, I'm not very creative. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to go about it. And yes, you do. Yes, you do. And I'm convinced that the moment you take 2 minutes to write things down, the good and the bad, that's when you go, oh, you know what? That was a very good game. And I came up with it. Or that was a very nice strategy to do this thing, to do this project, to overcome this situation, right? And this is the thing. Hold on. There we go. Also, pay attention to the things you do when you solve problems. For example, you wanted to play Kahoot. You spent the whole weekend creating that Kahoot, but there was a power cut at school and you couldn't play. How did you manage to work that day? What did you do? Did you have a plan B? Did you come up with something on the spot? Write it down. So in the future, you'll have a stash of ideas to keep handy, to use, right? Whenever something happens, or when you're planning and you cannot come up with questions, check that list of all the things you did and worked. Right. So that is the end of my session. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. Let me know. Yeah, you did. Cool. Let me know if you're planning to use those ideas. Yeah, absolutely. We want it to be practical and simple. Absolutely. Yeah, that is the idea. Thank you guys.
Okay,
Cool.
thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pilar, so very much for so many inspiring ideas and a practical outlook on how to be creative in the classroom. Sometimes, as teachers, put a lot of pressure on ourselves and think that being creative means coming up with these very big projects or very ambitious things. And sometimes it's as simple as just reflecting on your lesson at the end of the day or talking to your students about their expectations. So
Absolutely.
I think the chat agrees that these are all very insightful ideas. And of course, we have some questions. If you haven't left your questions in the chat, please do. So we're going to take a few minutes now towards the end of this session to tackle those. Is that okay, Pilar?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So one of the comments that we got in the chat has to do with adapting lessons. And one of our participants says, "How could you adapt these wonderful activities to be done with perhaps primary school, elementary, starter students?" Because some of the examples that you showed show perhaps high-level students, if we think of
Mhm.
reading Shakespeare, or a more advanced levels in the case of the writing tasks that you showed. Do you think these ideas could work perhaps in primary, perhaps with elementary level students?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, I'm thinking about the Instagram accounts. Maybe I would do it with elementary students, but not primary school students, just to make sure they're safe, right? But elementary students can share just short phrases telling their audiences what's going on in the story that you're reading. It doesn't have to be Shakespeare. It can be a short story. It can be a text from a course book. It can be a poem, and they can share summaries of different poems you read all throughout the year. So definitely. Or the one where we write questions and we put them in a jar and we use them every now and then to go over the things that we work with our students. Maybe students can share the questions with us and we can write them down, right? Or they can write them and then we can rewrite them on the board, and maybe we can go over them together to see if things are okay. Do we need to change something? Is this clear enough? So for sure, there's always a way to adapt all these activities. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's important what you mentioned about, for example, using class Instagrams. And you did mention that the content was supervised by yourself and that these are
Absolutely.
accounts specially created for the group to work with during the lessons and not
Yeah.
perhaps personal accounts. But it is important to know that, for example, Instagram has 13 plus user
Yeah.
minimum age. So this is not something we can use in primary.
Yeah.
I remember back in the day, there used to be this sort of classroom apps where you could simulate a Facebook post or an Instagram
Yeah.
post, but it would look like it was a post, but not on an actual platform. So perhaps
Yeah.
that would be an adaptation if the younger
Definitely.
ones are interested. But whatever
Yeah.
it is, even if it's writing these comments on a poster on the wall for the school
Yeah.
to would work. Absolutely. We have tons of questions also coming in from our Facebook. One of the questions comes from Javier Maturana in the chat, and he's asking about preschool students. And
Mm.
this is tricky because he says, of course, they don't know how to write. If
Yeah.
you think about maybe a 4 or 5 year old. So, how do you teach them new vocabulary? And do you do this in a non-traditional way? Pilar, have you ever taught preschool?
I was going to tell you, I don't. I work in secondary school. So, yeah, maybe we would need to come up with new activities. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And
Hmm.
whenever we're working with younger learners, perhaps vocabulary is something that we work on a lot, but
Yeah,
maybe more through games, through chants, through a lot of
simply
repetition,
using
sometimes at
pictures.
word level or a short phrase level, using
Yeah,
flashcards, using drawings, and it's perhaps a different sub skill set. Um,
absolutely. Yeah. So,
and yes.
sorry. No, as we said, the moment we start thinking about our learners, we can say, this activity is lovely. How am I going to use this with my students? You start making some changes here and there, and you end up with a completely different activity. And that's the one you should write down in your teacher's notebook to keep handy. Yeah.
Absolutely. Many people commented in the chat about your idea of using this notebook, and they
Mhm.
commented on the idea of journaling as a
Yeah.
tool for reflective practice. Is this something that you keep to consistently, or is it something that you have handy and whenever the light bulb goes on, you just jot things down?
I do it very, very often. What I don't do is journal because that takes a lot of time, and I cannot just expect myself to journal because I know that I will have something else to do, and I'll be tired. So I need something that's very, very practical and takes no time. So what I do is I have that notebook handy with me all the time, and I just write a short phrase like this game that worked, giving instructions this way, doing this, doing that, because I know that that's what I can do. Maybe if someone enjoys journaling, that could be a lovely activity, but I just know myself and I need to be very practical. So I just focus on what worked and didn't work, and that's it. I like lists.
Okay. On this note, Lucia in the chat mentioned that she would also apply another column with ideas that don't belong in either of those categories. So it's
Oh,
not just work,
yeah.
work, didn't work, but maybe have a third category for the more random thoughts and feelings. And she says so that you can go on working over those ideas that still
Yeah,
need some improvement. So it's not maybe black and white.
absolutely. Yeah, that's a lovely idea because sometimes we see things, we read things, and we're like, I would love to do something with this, but I don't know what. So we can just jot it down and then revisit the idea later to see what happens. Yeah, that's a lovely idea.
Absolutely. And Javier also mentions in the chat this idea that revisiting,
Mm.
perhaps your planning helps a lot. And every year is a new opportunity because students and contexts are different.
Yeah.
And we teachers ourselves change from one year to the next, hopefully.
Yeah.
So is there any special way in which you prepare to start a new academic year?
So I always have lots of ideas handy. I mean, all of these always, they're always there. And I always ask maybe teachers who already know their students what to expect, what they like, what they don't like. And again, I walk into a classroom with maybe 10 activities. I might end up using two, but just in case, I'm like, if they want to speak, if they don't want to speak, if they like reading, if they like watching videos, if many of them are absent, if, if it ends up being a massive group. So just in case, I have plan B, C, D, especially for that first week.
Great. And going back to our previous question on teaching preschool, we have lots of handy comments in the chat on
Yeah.
how to teach vocabulary to preschool children. Maria Laura mentioning with realia, with pictures, with chants. Eugenia mentions through games, songs, short poems. Flashcards are mentioned as well. Dancing, why not? Or as Lisa mentions, TPR, total physical response activities work very nicely with young children. Daniela mentions acting.
Yeah.
So lots of ideas to work with the younger students in our YouTube comments. So this is something else that we can look at. Um, uh, Pao Masari mentions, what about students who can't speak English? Because a lot of the ideas that we talked about had to do with using the students as a resource,
Mm-hmm.
speaking activities, in writing activities, for them to have perhaps more autonomy. In your jar, they write the questions, they answer the
Yeah.
questions. So when we are teaching beginners
Yeah.
or perhaps students who don't have the level to carry this sense of autonomy in your lessons. Is there anything that you like to do maybe at the start of the year, maybe as a warmer, maybe as a fun thing to do in your lessons?
Yeah, I love giving them sentence stems and useful language. So, how to start a question, how to ask about the meaning of a word, how to say that they agree, how to say they need an example, how to say the connection is a bit dodgy, how to say everything, all the things that they're going to need. And I always tell them, keep it handy. Don't leave this in your notebook. Don't leave this in some file. No, no, no. I want you to keep that handy with you so that whenever you need something, you can go there. Take all the time in the world. You need 5 minutes to look for the phrase. Doesn't matter. Do so. You have all the time in the world. I love doing that because especially at the beginning, it's difficult to organize all the words and to remember all these new words. So just having something you don't have to think about, it's just, repeating it, reading it, keeping it handy. I feel like that helps a lot, especially at the beginning.
Classroom language is crucial at the
Yeah,
start of your learning journey in another
yeah,
language. For sure, Carolina mentions in the chat activities where they have to choose options. And
yeah,
of course, it's easier if you provide some of that language for them instead of
sure.
working on more open questions, open dialogues, this idea of giving choice, A or and B,
Yeah,
one or two, potato or tomato, and
yeah,
so on. Something that
absolutely.
I feel is useful is to give them the basics to be able to carry a speaking activity together and
Yeah,
teaching day one things like I agree, I don't agree, I
exactly.
like it, I don't like it, even as formulas. You don't have to teach present
Yeah,
simple day one, but yes, little formulaic expressions that they can use to
yes,
communicate in a pair work activity. Things like,
yes,
yes, that's right, no, that's wrong, for when you're doing pair work and they have to say, okay, this is a car, and the other person has to say, yes, that's true, no, that's wrong. For little guessing
exactly.
games, for little information gap.
Yeah.
You don't need all this language to have a simple dialogue.
That's true. That is
Um,
true. And prep time as well. Sometimes students do know the words, but they're like, oh my God, I need some time. What was it? I don't remember. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to ask you this question. This is the question. I can give them a model as well, an example. Check it out. Let's go over it. Is it clear? What do I mean? Do I mean this? Do I mean that? Take 1 minute, prepare your answer. If you need a hand, I'm here. And they can write it down, they can organize their thoughts, they can rehearse it, they can share it with a classmate, they can say it aloud a couple of times until it feels good. And then when we're all ready, I'm like, who would like to share their answer? So that they feel more confident, they know where they're going, they had some time to get ready. And that makes a huge difference for many students.
Absolutely. We always talk about interaction patterns. We always
Yeah.
talk about scaffolding. So whether it is this idea of doing closed pair work first, where they have preparation time and rehearsal time together with their partner without the pressure of an audience, and then moving on to open pairs, whether it is a think, pair, share type dynamic where you can think, write it down, look it up in the dictionary if you need it, use AI to help you if you need to, etc., and then get together with somebody to discuss whether it is perhaps I, we, you type scaffolding, where first the teacher speaks, then we speak together and we repeat and we practice the pronunciation for this expression and we work as a choir, and then it's you, and now you have to say something, you have to write something, or you have to do something on your own. And there's so much that we can do with beginners. That should not be the reason why we're not creative.
No, not at all. That is true.
Now, other questions having to do with recommendations. And people mentioned that you, of course, commented on different ways in which you use AI. In this case, for example, ChatGPT, although it could be any AI chatbot. You mentioned Kahoot, I think, as a kind of game you can play with students. Are there any other ways in which you like to use technology, or that any other go-to tools that you like to use?
Yeah, so I use those two. I also use Teachermatic. It's also an AI platform and it can do different things for you. You can use it to plan a lesson and then you tweak it if you want to. You can create texts, you can create activities based on YouTube videos. Something that I think is really, really, really important when picking the tools that we're going to be using this year is to try out different ones and then stick with 1, 2, maybe 3. Because something that I notice is that there are so many tools coming out all the time that it is overwhelming for teachers because we have very little free time and we end up spending it trying out all these new platforms because they're going to change the way we teach and everything's going to change forever and it's going to transform our teaching. And I feel like finding something that works for you and your student, that's all we need. Yeah.
Absolutely. If I could tell you how many things I have bookmarked over the last year. Oh, this is great for creating this thing. And then I spend a ton of time trying to figure out how the platform works. And then that sits in my bookmarks bar, never to be used. Until then, I want to use it, and now you have to pay for it, or now you're free to exercise, or something else. But in this vein, somebody on Facebook asked if you can use or if you can suggest AI-based raters for assessing and scoring writing automatically in terms of grammar, spelling, and coherence. Is this something that you would recommend to grade students' writings using an AI tool, or to what extent do you feel that we need human assessment?
I was going to tell you, I like reading things myself because there's that human thing. I'm not saying I'm better than an AI. I'm definitely not, but I just like being part of the process. And I feel like students like it when teachers read what they write. So I think that's a very important part of the process. Otherwise, it's like, why bother writing if she's not even going to read it? So I think that's a very important element. I do like the idea of using AI during the writing process and maybe sharing phrases or sentences or paragraphs with an AI and saying, how can I make it better? Explain to me what changes you make to what I wrote, or how, why, right? And we can talk about it. Everyone can share something that ChatGPT improved or changed. And we can say, is that actually a good idea? Because sometimes a student shares something that ChatGPT changed, and we end up going, I mean, it is a nice idea, but I feel like ChatGPT didn't understand where we were going with this activity. Maybe the prompt wasn't the right one. Maybe ChatGPT just didn't get it. So it can be a very nice tool to use during the process, but I don't know if I would just allow it to do that for me. Yeah.
Yes, and in the same way as we complain that students do the whole writing using AI,
exactly. Yeah.
fair if we did all the grading using AI. But I agree with the
Absolutely.
idea of incorporating AI during your process writing and encouraging learners
Yeah.
to also to know what to ask. So how can I say this
Absolutely.
in a more formal way? How
Yeah.
can I make these two ideas a bit shorter? Things like
Yeah.
that as a writing companion rather than just
Yeah.
write this whole
Absolutely.
thing or grade this whole thing. Um,
Mhm.
so
And because
lots of comments. Yes.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that because we're also the ones reading what our students write, we know what lessons we need to plan. So we know they need to work on spelling. We know we need to work on more complex sentences. We need, so that's super important. Maybe there's an AI that can do it and is amazing at doing that. But, we get so much information when we read what our students write that it would be a pity not to do it.
Yes, and sometimes also when we import students' work into AI, we also need to be ethical about the
Yeah.
extent to which it is the moral thing to do to
Yeah.
upload students' work into an AI that
Mhm.
will, of course, take this as their own for the future. So careful with AI guidelines as well.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid we don't have a whole lot more time. Pilar, can you remind us again, where can we find you if we want to get more of your ideas?
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram. My username is at teachers of English underscore, and you'll find lots of very practical, very simple teaching ideas.
What did you post about this week?
So, oh, by the way, today I shared some ready made resources I found on teaching English. So, if you guys happen to be getting ready for a new school year, for your first lessons, you're going to find some very nice ready made resources that you can download and use with your students.
Brilliant. And Pilar often posts collaborations with the British Council where she shares British Council resources and ideas. So we encourage her, you all to give her a follow and stay tuned. So thank you so very much, Pilar. And we need to head to our next session. So for people on Facebook and in the Teaching English community, you will get a survey to record that you attended today's talk. Please complete the form so that you receive your certificate of participation. And if you want to continue watching the different talks in ELT Week Argentina, you can head to the British Council Argentina YouTube channel. That's all for today on our Facebook. For everybody else, we are going to continue with the next session in just 5 minutes. We're going to take a little break. So we will begin our next session at 7:05 in 5 minutes from now. So please don't go anywhere, and we'll see you very